And we're back in the studio like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Sunday evening here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Well, unfortunately, tonight is another somber episode. One of my favorite, sort of under the radar to certain people, actors has passed away. That is former Oscar nominee very early in his career, Terence Stamp, just an ingenious, resourceful, often menacing British actor, Terence Stamp. And my first exposure to Terence Stamp, so to speak, was all the way back in December of 1978 when OG Superman, starring another one of my favorite people who is no longer with us, Christopher Reeve, in the Cape, Superman Cape, I guess you could say. It was in the Cape, yeah. But Terence Stamp is in the first act of that film on Krypton, really the first 10 minutes, as General Zod. And if you thought that there was only one Superman movie, if you didn't know there were sequels and stuff, the character is early on set up as this major antagonistic force, and then he disappears more or less for the rest of the movie, except being trapped in the Phantom Zone. But despite this being a somber episode, I do have to tell one humorous story about this. So I saw Superman the movie. My parents took me. I think it was in its opening week. I may not have even turned 5 at that point. It took me, and I loved it as much as I could understand what was going on. And I don't really remember the scene with the Kryptonian supervillains. I don't remember that at all. I remember Superman, the girl with the cat in the tree, and saving Air Force One. There were certain things that kind of burned into memory. But years and years later, this has got to be mid-1990s, my mom's gentleman friend at the time had a very updated, like he had a Laserdisc player with enhanced stereo surround sound. Like for the mid-90s, this was state-of-the-art. And he didn't seem like a techie or a gearhead, but he had this great setup. And he happened to have Superman the movie on Laserdisc. And so he puts it in the player, and we start watching it. And again, for the era, this was an amazing, immersive experience. It wasn't even that large of a TV set, but the sound was incredible. So we start the movie, and John Williams' majestic score, and arguably his score just called Planet Krypton, it's as good as the rest of the score for this movie. So with a famous scene with, Marlon Brando somehow wearing his Rolex on Krypton. I guess we're supposed to believe maybe Kryptonians invented Rolexes. I don't know how they would have gotten to Earth then. But so we're on Krypton, and the famous scene where Zod basically offers, he wants Jor-El, just join us, and he's almost making a joke. He said, your voice will be very important, second only to my own. Like, you can't share it with him because Zod has to be he's got to be the guy. He has to be the alpha, even among other alphas. So watching the movie, it's myself, my sister, who was very young at the time, and my mom and my mom's boyfriend. And so it gets to the point where Zod realizes Jor-El's not going to team up with him. I mean, come on. I mean, how ridiculous, right? So then he starts threatening, you will bow down before me, Jor-El. Both you and one day your heirs. Now, we know that's what he says, but he screams it. He screams it. You and one day your heirs. So my mom's boyfriend pauses the movie, and he says, I've never understood that, and nobody ever brings it up. What? Well, why does he say, you'll bow down me, Jor-El, you and one day your ass? He thought that Terence Stamp was saying ass. When I tell you, my mom, I thought was going to have a hernia from laughing so hard. But if you listen to it the first time, and there are a couple of movie reactors, did he say ass? No, he actually says heirs. So my first experience with Terence Stamp was him screaming that at the beginning of Superman. But when I saw it at age 5, I don't even remember what I thought he said. Did I even know what the word was, heirs or ass for that matter? But Terence Stamp's performance in Superman 2, we can debate the Donner cut versus what Richard Lester, the theatrical version, I'm in the camp. The theatrical version is far superior because Donner didn't get to finish his film. It would have been different if he had gotten to complete it, but I think he left about 25% on the table. And then when Richard Lester, in all good, with all due respect, and trying to make the best of it, just a disgraceful situation, he asked if he and Donner could maybe work together. Can we do something to salvage what you did? And I don't really blame Lester for trying. And I also don't blame Donner for saying, no thank you, I'm all set here. Go ahead, make your movie. These fucking idiots that fired me. But in the realm of great villain performances, if I'm asked, what are some of the best villain performances in movies? Well, we got one right here. You can't see him. Dennis Hopper as Frank Booth in Blue Velvet is in my top 5. Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber in Die Hard would be up there. If you want to go, you won't be able to see it. Teddy KGB in Rounders, I don't know if he would qualify. Scorpio Killer in Dirty Harry? I mean, you could make an argument. Darth Vader in Star Wars? Okay. There is no villain in Chariots of Fire. And Angel Heart. Well, I don't want to tell you who the villain is because that would spoil the movie, my single favorite horror film. But Terence Stamp as General Zod in Superman 2 is as good as any of them, even Frank Booth. Don't you fucking look at me! Where's my bourbon, you shithead? He is extraordinary. And one of the reasons why I didn't love Man of Steel, I like Henry Cavill. I'm not anti-Zack Snyder. I thought that his restored cut of Justice League was fantastic, up there with, to me, the best of the MCU. And I like Michael Shannon, but I feel like his Zod just doesn't, it didn't get there. Even though he has arguably more screen time than Terence Stamp's General Zod has in Superman 2. But to try to explain the particular magic that Terence Stamp carried with him in so many great roles, especially in the 80s and 90s, it is the way that he could play condescension and menace. Because there are plenty of actors who can play menace. And there are other actors, like a William Hurt, who can play condescension. But Terence Stamp did both of those things better than anyone I've ever seen. And he has that in other roles, but particularly in Superman 2, the sense of menace when he realizes his powers are beyond anything of any normal Earthlings, and the way he very quickly, and this was in the script, but he plays it beautifully, when he understands the person who can challenge him is also from Krypton. He's clever, he's smart, it makes sense. It doesn't take him 5 minutes to figure out what they're saying. He gets it immediately, this the son of Jor-El. And the way his eyes almost light up like, okay, this makes sense. The son of Jor-El. Well, now he will bow down before me. He will pledge eternal loyalty to Zod. It is really an incredible performance. And, his undoing, if you will, is that he thinks that he's superior intellectually to Kal-El, and he's really not. And the other advantage that Kal-El has is not something that he would have calculated. And this is where another villain that I forgot, Ricardo Montalban's Khan in Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, he might be in the top 5. I mean, you could flip a coin with any of these. But he's more intelligent than William Shatner's Captain Kirk, but he doesn't know starships. He doesn't know the function of starships the way Captain Kirk does. So General Zod does not understand, he doesn't understand Earth, or as he says it, Houston. So this is the planet Houston. He doesn't understand Earth, but he also doesn't understand the Fortress of Solitude because it doesn't belong to him. As much as he would take it over, it's not his. And the fact that he doesn't think to himself, maybe the son of Jor-El is more clever than he lets on. Maybe he is going to get me here, and even though I have numbers, and even though I could say, I've got your girlfriend, prisoner, maybe he's got something else. Doesn't think. Hubris is what brings him down. But the menace of the performance, the way we really think, he's willing to kill billions of people. He doesn't give a shit. They mean nothing to him. They're just, like in the movie Blade, they're just cattle. They're just cattle. At least Alfred Hitchcock said that actors should just be treated as cattle, not that actors were actually just cattle. But yeah, the Stephen Dorff character of Frost, they're just cattle. And then there's a back and forth with him and Wesley. So other than Superman 2, Terence Stamp appears in a number of fantastic films in the 80s. He did a movie with John Hurt called The Hit. I think that was Stephen Frears who directed it. He later did big one for Annette Bening, The Grifters, and John Cusack as well, Angelica Houston. That was what a dirty movie that was. And I don't mean like X-rated. It was dirty in terms of the themes and how horrendous most of the characters were. Pat Hingle, an actor, he played Commissioner Gordon in the first 2 Batman movies. Man, what a scumbag he plays there. But in addition to The Hit, he was very busy in the middle 80s, Terence Stamp. He plays Sir Lawrence Wildman, and you got to go way back, almost 40 years, to the original Wall Street. He plays the British version of Gordon Gekko. And he has some fantastic moments with Michael Douglas as Gordon Gekko. Michael Douglas seems to get the better of him in the kind of dialogue exchanges, but ultimately, Sir Larry has all kinds of other stuff going on if he wants to be able to bring even a shark, a monster shark like Gordon Gekko, to his knees. But the one great moment that Michael Douglas as Gordon Gekko has specifically with Terence Stamp's Lawrence Wildman, he doesn't like the fact that Terence Stamp is not only playing menace, but he's playing condescension. He's talking down to Gordon Gekko, like Gekko is beneath him. Gekko, you'd sell out your own mother for a deal. Hey, my mail is the same color as yours is, pal. At least it was till the Queen started calling you sir. Just awesome stuff. And a film from the previous year, which I've discussed on the channel, which I think is just way, way underrated, Legal Eagles. And the reason why it's underrated is because it can't quite decide whether it wants to be a thriller or a comedy. And it was Ivan Reitman, and he actually used some of the same sets from Ghostbusters, like they had a New York set, and they reused it for Legal Eagles. But Terence Stamp in the film plays a very mysterious character that had hooked up with Daryl Hannah's performance artist. And he doesn't really get to do that much other than be menacing and condescend to the various characters, including Robert Redford's, what was his name? Tom Logan. Mr. Logan, just the way he says Mr. Logan is worth the price of admission. You seem to be a very intelligent man, and I'm pretty sure that you're going to drop all charges. Just great stuff. And then he did a movie, he was in a supporting role, and you couldn't even tell it was him. The film Alien Nation, not the TV show, but the movie with Mandy Patinkin and James Caan. And you can't tell that it's him under the makeup, but the voice gives him away. The voice gives him away. And I really like that movie. I used to watch it anytime it was on HBO or Cinemax. But then you get into the 90s, and he just continued to do fantastic work, sometimes in smaller roles and sometimes in, kind of lead roles. A film that I don't love, but I understand why a lot of people do, Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And, Terence he's the lead in that film. But from a more contemporary prism and looking at what his co-stars ended up being and what they ended up doing in their career, his co-stars are Guy Pearce and Hugo Weaving. Agent Smith himself. Mr. Anderson, welcome back. You like what I've done with the place? Awesome. So Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert is about, these 3 individuals who are, I think that they're more like old school, they used to, what used to be called cross-dressing. I don't think that they're strictly speaking transgender. I'm really sorry. I should have known this, and I apologize. I humbly apologize because I should know this cold. I just thought of that movie now. I wasn't even planning on bringing it up. But that was a performance that got a lot of Oscar buzz for Terence Stamp. He wasn't winning in 1994. Nobody was winning, I shouldn't say unfortunately. Tom Hanks. At the time, I said unfortunately because I didn't like Hanks's performance as much as I did what he did in Philadelphia. But now I feel like Hanks's performance plays even better decades after. Like the movie and his performance seems touched by genius. And I guess I was hoping maybe John Travolta would pull an upset or something like that, or Paul Newman for Nobody's Fool. But who else? The Madness of King George. I forgot the name of the British actor who was up for that. Nigel Hawthorne. There was some talk maybe he was going to win. It didn't happen. But Adventures of Priscilla was a really interesting film, even if it wasn't necessarily my cup of tea. The performances are all great, and it got both Hugo Weaving and Guy Pearce, it got them noticed. It elevated their careers. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that Guy Pearce would not have ended up in LA Confidential without the strong turn that he gives in Adventures of Priscilla. And I feel like Hugo Weaving was doing okay. He had done a number of movies. There was one film, I can't remember it, but I remember seeing him on a VHS box. Was it called Proof? I could be wrong about that too. But that was a big movie. That was a big one, for Terence Stamp. And then I think about some of the other films. He made some movies that really weren't very good, like Red Planet, which was... some people thought it was better than Mission to Mars. Mission to Mars was the Brian De Palma film with Tim Robbins. I kind of thought that Mission to Mars was better, but Stamp, I believe, plays the doctor, like the ship's doctor in Red Planet. The movie just wasn't good. Neither of them were really any good. Hollywood, again, going through a phase where they made two of the same movie. They had the two Volcano movies in 97, Dante's Peak and then Volcano. Volcano, the single greatest Roger Ebert wisecrack in his entire career, where the problem with the movie Volcano is there was no volcano. If you're going to call a movie Volcano, there has to be a volcano. But the volcano, the eruption was not coming from, Mount St. Helens or even in Dante's Peak, where it was actually a mountain peak and an exploding volcano. In Volcano, it was coming from below ground. The eruption was coming from below ground, and it was coming through people's sinks. In Volcano, it was coming through people's sinks, which allowed Roger Ebert to say, in Dante's Peak, we have a real volcano. But in this movie, the volcano is Drano. The volcano is Drano, and that's exactly what that movie was. But in 1999, Stamp had two juicy roles, one film in which he's the lead and another in which he plays a very colorful supporting character where he gets to play condescension but not menace. So we'll start with the supporting performance first. If I'm asked, name 10 great big studio comedies of the 90s, the movie Bowfinger is getting named, mostly because the on-screen pairing of Steve Martin, who was just incredible, and Eddie Murphy. That's Eddie Murphy, I would say, might be his single best performance, playing two characters and doing it so brilliantly. Where was his supporting actor nomination? Like, how did he not get nominated for that? I don't know. But Terence Stamp plays the kind of leader, if you want to use the word cult, you can. I don't care. The leader of this Scientology-style cult called Mindhead. And he sneers and smiles sarcastically. His whole presentation is, I'm better than you. Whoever he's meeting with, I'm better than you, and I know it. The condescension, it is just all over every second of the performance until Steve Martin approaches him and says, I'm going to need your guy. One of the two characters Eddie plays, Kit Ramsey, the biggest star in Hollywood, who, spoiler alert, is pretty much a basket case. And without Terence Stamp's leader of Mindhead, the guy wouldn't know which end was up. He's just completely off his rocker. And Steve Martin presents Terence Stamp with some information. Your boy better play ball or we're going to humiliate him and we're probably going to fuck you guys over too. He doesn't say any of that, but that's the implication. Your guy messed up. We have proof. Your move, pal. Let's just go. And then all of a sudden the condescension disappears as he realizes, okay, we're screwed. I'm going to have to play ball with this loser. Thought he was, but that's not that. It turns out that was not the case. And Steve Martin's character of Bobby Bowfinger was holding all the cards. He didn't get to play that many leads after the early part of his career, making movies, as I say, like Billy Budd or The Collector. That's kind of an under-repped horror film, and Poor Cow with Ken Loach. But in the late 90s, Steven Soderbergh made a movie where he did not ask Terence Stamp to in any way tone down his accent. He wanted Terence Stamp to go full Cockney. so heavy that you almost need the subtitles. You get an idea of what the character means, but you can't always follow the words because not only is the accent sometimes indecipherable, there are certain slang phrases that, what does that even mean? It's almost a Clockwork Orange level, which reminds me, you love to hate social media sometimes, and then there are other times where you just can't help but laugh. So I was on Instagram seeing various movie-related pages showing pictures of Terence Stamp, and we lost a great one, and very few people are making jokes about it, but there were people in comments, and you could go on Instagram and check my work, I'm not making this up, that were saying words to the effect of, I loved him as Alex in A Clockwork Orange. Now, I guess he vaguely resembled Malcolm McDowell, but is that really a thing? Did people really confuse one for the other? I mean, I would say the Dennis Quaid, Harrison Ford thing, which some people appear to have a problem with, especially if they're under 30, and everybody over 70 is ready to be put out to everybody over 50 is ready to be put out after pasture, like myself. But there are people who think that this is the guy from A Clockwork Orange. Give me a break. Jeez. But in Steven Soderbergh's The Limey, Terence Stamp plays a man whose daughter has disappeared, and he is convinced that a music industry mogul was messing around with her, and he must know something about her disappearance. And in a weird way, the character that he plays in this film, it almost feels like General Zod has survived the events of Superman 2, maybe lost his superpowers, but still has the same imperious attitude, still has the same air of superiority, still has the same air of, I will fuck you up, I will end you. Or as he famously says as General Zod, why do you say this to me when you know I will kill you for it? That's a top 10 greatest line readings right there. Why do you say this to me when you know I will kill you for it? But Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor gives it right back to him. He doesn't back down. And it's to the credit of Gene being able to stay in the moment there and not allow himself to be overwhelmed by the kind of alpha that Terence Stamp is playing. So in The Limey, you have a regular guy who, I think he has a criminal record, the character that he plays. I don't remember the name of the character, but he's often known as The Limey because he speaks a certain way. So comes to America to try to figure out what happened. Where's my daughter? Is she dead? What's going on? And he meets a woman played by Leslie Ann Warren, a big star of her era, 70s and 80s. And also, she screen tested, speaking of Superman, she screen tested for Lois Lane. And I think Leslie Ann Warren is fantastic, but I'm glad she wasn't cast because the chemistry between her and Christopher Reeve, it didn't really look, they just didn't look right on screen together. And she was overly theatrical, at least in the clips that I saw. You could find this on YouTube, the screen test for Lois Lane from the 1970s. So he meets this woman in The Limey, played by Leslie Ann Warren, and gets information. The music industry mogul is played by another 60s and 70s legend in Peter Fonda. And there is a particular moment in this film. Well, there's two. There's one where he glares at Peter Fonda and he smirks at him. And I'm telling you, it's a General Zod smirk. It is that I have you where I want you. It is that kind of, the movie Get Shorty, I own you, motherfucker. He just gives him this look, this sneer and smirk. And you feel Peter Fonda's character is not going to survive this movie. So that's one moment where it's not a word, it's just a look on his face, and it's the way that he moves. Everybody that he's targeting, they're all going to end up dead. You had your chance maybe to get rid of this guy, you're all going to die now. So there's a scene earlier in the film where he goes to, I want to say it's an auto body shop, but someone there has information where he could find this guy. I think the character, the Peter Fonda character's name is Valentine, or Terry Valentine, I think is his name. So he goes to get some information, and he gets roughed up because, yeah, he's tough, but you got 5 guys who are bigger than him. So he gets roughed up, and they take away his gun. He goes outside, and we realize they only took away 1 gun. He still has another gun. He goes back in, and we hear the sound of gunshots. And then one of the guys in the body shop that was talking tough a couple of minutes ago comes running out like he's running the 100 meters. Terence Stamp races towards the camera. His face is a little bloody from having, gotten hit. And he doesn't tell us, he doesn't say anyone's name, but he goes, "You tell him." And he starts screaming. And it's almost a joke, like from The Office. He goes, "You tell him I'm coming! You tell him I'm fucking coming!" Just like that, where he almost can't even get the words out. He's so angry. And another genre actor from the 70s, Barry Newman, plays the right-hand man of Peter Fonda's Terry Valentine. And Peter Fonda actually had a lot of heat around him in that era because he was nominated for Best Actor for films released in 97. That was the year his old buddy Jack won for As Good as It Gets. And he was nominated for a movie called Yuli's Gold, which is, I saw it. It's okay. But if you ask me, did Peter Fonda give a transcendent performance? No, it was interesting. It was okay. I thought that particular year, Jack was a deserving winner. I really like what he does in As Good as It Gets. And Terence Stamp kept working. He was active as recently as 2021, the movie that was Edgar Wright, I think, Last Night in Soho. A really unconventional thriller set in two time periods. There's sort of a twisty mindfuck of a movie with Anya Taylor-Joy and I forgot who else was in it, but she's kind of the main draw in that film. And Terence Stamp plays a character who exists in two time periods. I didn't think the movie was altogether successful. It's like a 3 stars out of 4, but selfishly speaking, it was great to see him in a pretty interesting role. I wasn't into The Haunted Mansion. I know he had a kind of a scene-stealing performance in the 2003 Haunted Mansion. Wasn't into those movies. So there were a lot of films that he did starting in 2000, like after Red Planet and after Haunted Mansion, which I didn't see. Like they weren't interesting to me, and I didn't see them. And I didn't go to the movies that often after the 90s, just the way that things kind of worked out. But I am sad today that he's gone, and just such a distinctive performer. The perfect line readings, and just that way with the eyes. He had very piercing blue eyes. They almost looked like they were color corrected, but they weren't. But just the way that he could hold a close up, the stillness in the face, the flat line readings, and really the perfect inflections. And he was really something. And he lived a long life, and I hope that those closest to him, I hope they know how many lives he touched, how many people who are just normal film fans will always say, this is one of the greatest villains we've ever seen in a movie. That guy, I don't know his name, that British guy who played Zod was just incredible. And he really was. So, Terence Stamp, born July 22nd, 1938, passed today, August 17th, 2025, an Oscar nominee and a really extraordinary actor, and by all accounts, pretty good guy. I forgot he was in Star Wars Episode 1 as Chancellor Valorum. He doesn't really have much to do other than kind of get dressed down by Natalie Portman's Queen Amidala, but it still was great to see him. Yeah, that was 1999 also. Man, busy year for him. Bowfinger and Star Wars Episode 1 and The Limey. This has been episode 594 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your Sunday evening here with me in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then,